Um,
Mhm.
have I met Brittany?
I don't think so.
Don't you love a false start? It's been a long day.
It's okay.
All
It's almost
right,
Friday. It's
everybody.
almost Friday.
I'm like, is it Monday yet? Can I go to Florida yet? That'll be great. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Tonight's topic, witchcraft, magic, and addiction. And joining me tonight, we have Alexa. And Alexa, you work in recovery counseling.
Yeah, I am the administrative manager for an addiction clinic.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
And
It's never a dull moment.
I bet, especially like probably this time of the month with the full moon and everything else.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
and we have Brittany. And if you are in the Cleveland area, you probably have seen Brittany, know Brittany. Brittany's like a local little celebrity. I shouldn't say little, but you know. So Brittany of Synergy Soul. And I was glad we could nab Brittany, you know, to join us on this one. And so Brittany, why don't you tell us like how you got into since Alexa is our like counselor recovery, you can speak from the other side.
Yeah, I was the addict.
Mhm.
That's where it all began. Not in the recovery part.
Not yet.
So this is a live discussion. Feel free to type in questions or comments. We will answer them live for you. It could be directed at any one of us. I'm just kind of like the moderator, the question stirrer. I'm not a counselor in this. I'm not in recovery. Kind of along for the ride. So actually, these two ladies do most of the work tonight while I keep track of comments and everything else. So, you know, but maybe I think one of the first questions that kind of popped into my head when I was thinking this one out was, you know, Brittany, you are a practitioner.
Mhm.
And which kind of came first for you? Was it being the practitioner or was it like the addiction?
The addiction first. I think I know that's what led me to practicing was why am I an addict? Right. And I'm like, oh, I'm an addict because I'm disconnected to something that I'm not listening to within myself. You know, I know we talked about this before, but just for people who are new, listening to us, where as a psychic medium or as a channeler or whatever, intuitive or whatever you want to call it, some people, those of us who don't grow up knowing what we're doing or our gifts or what's going on, it sometimes can come across as like maybe there's mental health issues, or maybe there's something else going on, or maybe, you know, there's something running in the family, when really it's a disconnect from our gifts, and, you know, hearing all these things or doing all these things and feeling all these things and not knowing. And so my thing was, well, if I'm going to feel all the things, I want to feel euphoric in the things. And so that's why I chose drugs, really sex and drugs, to be honest, you know. And that's what led me to, there was really a point when I said, okay, I'm ready to live, because I am so tired of not feeling like I'm living, you know. So that's what really led me, like, what is really going on here? What is really the basis of this? And I've said this, I say this all the time, that everybody's path is going to be different, right? But for me, I tried westernized ways of mental health and recovery, and it just was not doing justice. It was not doing its work. It wasn't doing what it needed to do for me. So I needed to dive into something different. And now here I am as a practitioner. So it worked, you know?
Now, Alexa, in your center, do you find that there are some of the clients who probably are, you know, gifted in the spiritual or magical sense, and they're kind of hiding from it or running from it?
Oh, absolutely. So with with my experience with the demographic that we get to treat, I think one of the most amazing things, the first thing I always remind people about, like things with addiction and dependency, it's literally happening to everyone. It is not the stereotype that our parents grew up with of what an addict looks like. Now we've got teachers and lawyers and accountants and PTA moms, and all of these people are funneling in because they're suffering from the same kinds of problems. But there are definitely, I usually think it's because they can pick up on the fact that I'm also pagan. There are several people that we've treated before that they'll come at it from a sense of like, I was overwhelmed by these sensations. I was overstimulated and I didn't know what to do with myself. And they would turn to, opiates, benzos and things like that because they needed the shutdown. They needed something to turn it off because they didn't know what to do with it once they had it. And it's a really overwhelming feeling for a lot of people, especially when you couple that with, somebody's biological predisposition towards addiction or dependency, someone's environment that's feeding into that kind of lifestyle. Like it can very quickly become a black hole that someone can lose themselves in.
Yeah, that's real. You just said that about like being overstimulated. And I noticed even when I started doing readings and sessions for a living, I don't even really like alcohol. I don't even like the way it makes me feel. Right. Mm-hmm. But I would drink at night so that I didn't have to, so I'm like, you guys are driving me nuts. Like I need to get to sleep and everybody's still talking, even after cleansing and showering, they would still be talking. And I'm like, I'm done. My work is done for the day. So I would drink. I would drink at night just so I could shut them off.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't even really like to drink. So it was just exactly what you just said. It's an overstimulation or, just being able to be like, oh my gosh, can you just be quiet for a second? Or so I don't feel something for a second. Yeah, that's real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know I personally, I'm so well guarded that it's harder for me to hear and see, spirits and whatnot, that for me to have a drink, I relax enough. And then I'm like, oh shit, I see the breather now. In a way, sometimes it can help. But I mean, if either one of you ladies, have you found that there's is it a greater benefit or a deterrent or negative in any of your magical working, especially we'll kind of get into maybe more of the actual magic versus just the mediumship? When did it become more of a negative for you?
Are you speaking of the drinking in general?
Just drinking or anything else. If you thought at first it helped, but then it just became when you decided that you were going to do more I'm going to cast this or I'm going to try and manifest this. Were you finding that doing that while drunk or high instead of lowering, inhibitions, it caused more problem? Did you ever find that?
Yeah. So different drugs would cause different things for me. If I did cocaine, I could read I could read 25 people and not get tired, Mm-hmm. But it's funny that you say that about drinking because, I'm a practitioner of Santeria. And so a lot of times in our tradition, alcohol is brought in. You take a shot of rum or you drink rum from a calabash and you smoke cigar, right? But through the misas that I have been able to be a part of, I actually can't drink. It makes me oversensitive and I get sick to my stomach when they're trying to come through with alcohol. So I just don't. But yeah, I guess it really depended where I never really used them for that reason. I would just do something and realize, oh, this has heightened it, or, oh, this has shut it down. Mostly uppers will heighten it for me, at least. It's opposite. Alcohol is for most people, a lot of times alcohol brings it in. And my brain is complete opposite. It was the uppers where everything could come in and alcohol is where it was just no thanks.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's how you're wired. Because for me, I've noticed every once in a while I'll do tarot readings or something like that. Or even when I'm doing little impromptu, one-on-one sessions with budding practitioners that just want advice. I have tried drinking thinking, oh, I'll just take the edge off. It'll be fine. I get overstimulated. I get oversensitive because suddenly all of those nice little clean cut barriers that I put in place for myself, because that's where I operate on a regular basis, they get knocked over. everything that person is getting out can get into me now. And it's hard to balance biologically what your brain likes, because I'm a firm believer that from a biological standpoint, our humans like to alter their brain chemistry. We find ways to do it that you would not even think fathomable. We crave that kind of that change, that mix up, that euphoria. And balancing that with your natural connection with your higher power and your spirituality is tricky, because a lot of times when you do use any sort of substance or anything like that, you are lowering your inhibition. You're lowering your reservations about doing anything. That's where a lot of like the reckless behavior comes with substance uses, because your ability to make a decent judgment is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. It's not a thing. And so suddenly it's easier for you to believe, oh yeah, I'm going to try that spell. Actually, I've got, because you talk yourself up, you give yourself that initial liquid courage push to go do something. But then when, I guess in my personal experience, when it comes to the actual nuts and bolts of it, I have never had success doing any sort of reading, any sort of ritual, any sort of spell work in any state of inebriation. Like my brain operates best when it's sober, because that's how I can make the cleanest and clearest connection with whatever higher power I'm working with or whatever energy I'm working with. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to worry about, all the little synapses in my brain are doing what they're supposed to do, because I need them all to be focused on the energy work I'm doing. I don't need them to be focused on, being inundated with whatever substance I've just put in my body. So for me, I've noticed if you're going to plan a fun, great ritual, sure, have a drink. When it comes to the doing it, don't drink, because you're going to need that. You're going to need that focus. You're going to need that center of balance and that good judgment to be able to make that true, honest connection with your higher power.
Yeah, I like that you said that, because now that I'm sitting here thinking about and just playing back situations in my head, I noticed that when my mind is the clearest is when it would freak me out of how clear things would be, right? And I would be like, whoa, like, okay, now this is starting all over again, where now it's so much that how do I handle all of this and still maintain my everyday life and all of these things? And so it would be like, okay, let me just reach for one thing. Like, let me just have one drink or, whatever. And to slow it down a bit, because it's so incredibly clear. But now being in Iyawo, I love cannabis. I still love cannabis in times of my life. But now as an Iyawo and going into priesthood, there's nothing, right? And so I went through that little stage of like, okay, I know it's going to get super, super, super heightened again. And I was like, I'm going to sit with it, right? And I've been in now in my Iyawo year for a little bit over 100 days, I believe. And it caused me to stretch. It kind of was like, if I explain what it feels like there's like a kind of like a statue, right? As though you put a living thing underneath the statue, and now that statue starts to shake and you're breaking out of that. That's what my body would feel like in these moments of, okay, it's really, really heightened. And now you have to learn how to differentiate, because it got even more clear after my initiation. It was like literally it was a whole rebirth. I'm not the same person as I was before it. And so now it's a level of clarity that I have never experienced, even during times of sobriety before this. And it was like, whoa, like I could really use something right now to calm myself down, but luckily I have the time and space and energy to sit with my ancestors or go into meditation or things like that, because it comes in where it's a way where you're like, now you have to learn how to reorganize all of these things all over again. You know what I mean? Where it's like, before you could, okay, you have these things, it helps you, but now you're sitting here by yourself and there are no external tools. I like herbal things like ashwagandha and stuff to just help me calm down, especially when I'm sleeping and things are overactive. But it's funny that you say that, because that's how it felt. It felt like, okay, I've been here before, but not this clear. And now there's this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. And like, now we have to remember again how on our own to pull this message over here and this message over here. Is this for this person and that person? It's been quite a journey, I'll be honest. For a couple of days, am I losing it?
Well, and that's what like newfound sobriety is for so many people, is because when you develop that like chemical dependency where your brain makes you do those addictive behaviors, it changes your behavior, it changes the way you cope, you deal with things, how your thought processes work. A lot of people that are suffering from like, any sort of substance use, the second highest diagnosis we see with them is ADD and ADHD, because they always report, I am overstimulated, I can't focus, I'm all over the place, I'm here, I'm there. A lot of times it's people chasing that brain stimulant because they need their brain to slow down for them, because they can't process. It's like funneling a bunch of water through a straw. You're not going to get a very wide flow. You've got all this input and a very narrow output for it. And a lot of people, when they first find their newfound sobriety, like it's similar to really stepping into your full, truth and power as a practitioner for the first time, because you have to you relearn everything.
Yeah.
You relearn your coping skills. You relearn how to calm yourself down. You learn how to self-soothe. You learn what environments actually are and are not good for you. And a lot of times it's stuff that like people literally, you have to change your entire life. Sobriety is a decision that a lot of people struggle to make, but once they make it, making it becomes the easy part. 'Cause you're like, well, shit, now how do I keep it? Because I'm here. And it's like that upper level, that climb up for people is intimidating. It's hard. And it's so similar to when you finally do realize what gifts you do have and what things you are able to do with your magic. Like those two things can run so parallel for each other. I have the utmost sympathy for practitioners that don't know they're practitioners.
Yeah. I have a lot of clients like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is like not has to do with drug addiction, but just thinking, right? Because again, I keep referencing my Yawo year because it's so fresh and I'm still obviously in it for 9 more months. But thinking about addiction of not drugs, right? Like little things that we would use that I've noticed throughout this process, where things that I would normally reach for, I've been in the house for so many days outside of just being quarantined, just because as in Yawo, where there's not many things that we are to protect our energy, to stay in certain places, a lot of people, places with a lot of people, being conscious when you're going grocery shopping, all of those things. And so I've noticed an addiction to when I'm overstimulated, run out of the house, right? Like, go do something, go somewhere. Okay. Or like, oh, my family's driving me nuts, go. Right. And there's none of that. And those little addiction things to even not just drugs, but like things that we're doing. Oh, buy something. Or, because I teach money manifestation and money mindset work and money magic. And so it's just that, like when we're in the process, not even just with drugs, but just with everything, it's being able to slow down and look at like, like you said, what are my coping mechanisms in everyday life? Like look at people right now in being in quarantine, like they're reaching for a lot of things, food, sleep, and things that are really addictions that they didn't even notice were addictions until now they're here. Or for example, one that I've really noticed right now, I guess I never really paid attention to beauty, like, like getting ready in the morning. I don't really wear makeup anyways, but my hair, okay. I had like, my hair was always it just did its thing, now I have no hair. It was an addiction. It was an addiction to be like, oh, I feel like a blanket with my hair, right? And now having no hair, it's like, oh, well, how are you going to feel comfortable in yourself if you don't have your hair? Just the little tiny things that we don't know that we're holding on to as an addiction. And we think, like you said, that everybody thinks addiction looks like this type of person, but if you remove it, then you really know everything that you were addicted to. Your success, what it looks like on the outside, the way that your body is feeling, or being able to go to the gym every single day because the gyms were shut down. All of these little tiny things that nobody paid attention to that they're addicted to. And so the funny thing about quarantine was it gave everybody an opportunity to break through those things. And some people, they did it, and some people they fell deeper into it. But I was just thinking about that because I've really had a shed. I told my godmother today, I said, people say about glow up, but you really don't glow up inside until you get everything taken away. You don't really have anything about what you have,
When a lot of that comes down to like, how you feel comfortable in the world and how you like define safety for yourself in the world. And a lot of I know a lot of people that suffer from addiction, and it's not just addiction to substances. It can be, it's retail therapy. It's, oh my God, I've got to go for a jog. It's eating. It's not eating. It's working out compulsively. It's, getting online and losing yourself for 3 hours in TikTok because you don't know what else to do with yourself. The things that we derive comfort from and how we feel safe in the world, a lot of times our addictions are what make us feel safer, because in a certain amount of sense, they're predictable. I know what I have to do. I know how I'm going to get the reward. I know what the reward's going to feel like. And I know how long I can go before I have to start all over again.
Yeah.
There is comfort in that rhythm. There's a stability there that people, like, your brain craves that stability. And however you give it to yourself is how you're going to continue to go back and tap that resource. And I see a lot of people who, me personally, for example, like, I derive a lot of my stability and safety from my spirituality, from my religion. That's my safe spot. That's where I feel good. I feel solid. I feel stable. It makes sense of the world. I could not imagine being someone who didn't understand that kind of work, didn't understand the gifts that you were given and the abilities that you had, and being so afraid of that you would run to something so much more harmful, thinking that the gift of mediumship, the gift of intuitive work, of shaman work, like, especially in today's culture where we have such a stigma against any sort of like Easternized medicine. Like, if it's literally like we're treating people solely on Western medicine. Oh, you have a problem, here's a pill. Now we've gotten into, thankfully, the last 10 years, we've seen a little bit more of an approach with like, oh, let's do actual therapy. Let's talk to people rather than just, here's your pill, take it, you'll feel better. Now we're finally seeing that final push into like full comprehensive medicine where we're treating people as a whole. How is your biological health? How is your psychological health? How's your spiritual health? How's your relationship with your higher power? What are you doing about it? Who are you talking to? Because those aspects are all present in a person. And as soon as you get one of them unbalanced, the other two crumble.
Yeah, that's really real. Yeah, that's been huge, watching, even having the opportunity to watch it throughout 2020, of people really reconnecting to themselves and their faith, breaking through all this fear of like everything's going to fall apart. But really, is it like what our creator really let everything fall apart to that, where it would be nothing, like that's not how it works, and really it's only what people are allowing themselves to, how they're responding to what's happening. That spiritual health piece is like what's really, I think, I know is missing. My grandma was here visiting, and we were talking about how this westernized world, at least America, we'll just speak of the United States of America, it's not all of America, but United States of America is a lot of why what happens here is because people have disconnected their higher power from everything else. Like, there's not many other places in the world that are like that. They still have their connection to their higher power or their God or whatever. And so we think, I'm watching, like, even in politics, right? I don't really get into politics, but I was watching all these things go on, and people are so close-minded to what's going on in the United States. The people in the United States are like, oh my God, this and this. And I'm like, this is how much of what's actually going on is the United States. And there's all these other things in certain places that doesn't happen because people are connected to source, But yeah, that's a huge, huge piece of the healing, is just reconnecting. It doesn't have to be God or whatever people have to call it. It's just what does that feel like to you,
Well, that's something I wanted to ask you as well, because it's something that I noticed when I went to Al-Anon for about 2 years, because my family, and again, everyone's family suffers from addiction. And even if you think it doesn't, it totally does. Don't worry. You're not in that boat alone. I went to Al-Anon for a couple of years, and I struggled in the recovery portion of that, because as a pagan or New Age practitioner, a lot of recovery programs are based on like 12-step work, AA work. All of it's Christian based. It's really hard to feel that community and that connection and that sense of grounding and purpose that a lot of the recovery programs teach. And they do work. The recovery programs are great. They work for a lot of people. I noticed for me personally, I struggled to connect because I couldn't relate to the fact that we were all standing around saying the Our Father. It's like, well, this isn't my religion, so I don't know what to do with it. Like, is that something that you noticed when you were like trying to go through recovery?
I finished it. I only went because I was court ordered. None of the traditional things worked for me. It wasn't until I connected to what were of my, I'm half African American and half Polish, so I have pagan ancestors. And so it wasn't until I connected to my ancestry and just what practices that they would bring through for me when I was like, this doesn't feel right. Although I do have a lot of Christian ancestors, and yes, I still work with the Psalms and I work with the Bible. Now I do, but from a sense of for them, not for just for myself. But no, that felt very, when I was there, I mean, I guess I was still high when I was there, so it didn't really matter. But the
Rebel Brittany. The rebel.
We were like the bad kids. We'd be like, let's get high and go sit in the back. But it was more of, it felt like, this is how, like you said, I know it works for a lot of people, right? But it felt like if you don't do it this way, it's not going to work.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, if you don't take these steps, and I'm like, watch me. Like, let me just show you that you don't have to do it like this, right? And also let me show you that addiction can be healed when you actually get down to why you have it in the first place, So I've been through a series of things. Like, I was addicted to cocaine, and then years after, I had done cocaine a couple times, and I was like, I'm over it, So it wasn't like, oh, okay, I need this anymore. It was, okay, whatever was the reasoning of me needing that, let's take care of that energetic reasoning underneath, or that karmic reasoning underneath. And so for me, the 12 steps were like, well, if you don't do this, then you're going to fall again. But that's not really, it's kind of like Western medicine again. It's like, let's put a Band-Aid on it and never really actually take care of what's going on underneath. They tell you, you can never go to a bar again. Well, then you're not really, what are you really healing? Because if you can't put yourself in a space and be like, I'm fine, then you're just, it's kind of like two swords, right? Like, let's just cover ourselves up and not look at anything and see what's going on right now, or not look at what's going on. Just blindly walk around and slap some shades on your eyes and not look, right? So I did it. I only went till when I had to go for court. And my healing was mostly just me walking my path of connecting to what my truth was, reconnecting with my ancestors and our practices. And that's what worked for me. That's when I was like, okay, like, this is working. This is what feels good. And even in my initiation, there was things that came up like, you should stay away from this because there was addiction in your family. Well, I already know that, so.
Right.
But it's based on you. In Santeria, when we have our initiations, our readings are not like a Catholic priest where everybody follows the same rules. Now, during the year, everybody might have similar rules, but after that year, those taboos, is what we call them, are for you, right? And you can follow them or you can't. I mean, they're telling you, hey, here's the opportunity for you not to, or for you to prevent having to go through extra karma. So watch for these stones in the road, but you could do them and then trip, So it's not like, they don't drill in your head the fear that the 12 steps do. We're like, oh God, you'll fail. And then, it felt very like, shove it in a box. And
well, it's a very Christian approach. And again, I don't yuck anyone else's yum. I don't take anybody's peace of mind for granted. You believe whatever you want to believe in. I think I've met several true Christians that are wonderful, beautiful people. A lot of times, though, that Christian-based approach in religion, it teaches that idea of surrender and submission, where a lot of New Age religions, across the entire umbrella that encompasses literally everybody else, it's not a religion of submission. We stand up, we take accountability, we take stock of ourselves, we take the load and we take the consequences on. We don't give it to a higher power. And I think a lot of people that find success in the 12-step program is because that's how their spirituality is based. It's based in, I need to give this up to my higher power. They'll help me do it for me. Whereas a lot of the New Age religions, our higher powers look and go, I'm not picking that shit up. You pick it up. What are you doing about it? Like, I'll back you up, but you got to make the first move. Like, when you come at recovery from that very, self-empowered and self-autonomous approach, it's a whole other struggle to get yourself there, because you you operate on the basic assumption that you are responsible. Only you.
Yeah.
You don't get to give it to anybody else. It's on you.
We got to switch that term though, because our practices are not the new age. Actually, they're the oldest ones. You know what I mean? Every time somebody says it, I'm like, no.
Well, I don't know how else to like umbrella and encapsulate the fact, like, there's got to be a word that encompasses the fact that, like, there's practitioners like you, there's people like me, there's little kitchen witches, there's people like how
ancient. We're the ancient practitioners here, and these newer things, look at this little moth. These newer things are actually, if we were to be honest, the Christian practices are more newer than anything, you know?
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm. Like very fear-based.
Yeah.
You're very fear-based, you know, like you got to do this. But again, it works for other people. I don't, like you said, whatever works for anybody. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do or what to believe in, but it definitely is the accountability for self and being able to say, okay, I'm going to take this on, you know, or no, I don't want to do this, or maybe I'm not ready for that. That's another thing too that I noticed is when you force in the practice where you're autonomous, spiritually autonomous, where you're choosing, right? Where you're choosing that, whether you're Christian or you're in ancient traditions, that you want, then you choose sobriety, right? Like you choose to heal that addiction, because forcing yourself and now always seeing, I remember listening to a talk by from Abraham Hicks, and the woman was asking about cigarettes. And it was really great how she said it, because she was saying, if you keep thinking, she's like, I want to quit cigarettes because it's bad. Well, now you keep telling your body it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. So you are not going to actually let it go. You're going to keep calling it in because you're not accepting it for what it is. And so part that also has to do with addiction. Like, okay, here I am. I'm an addict and I'm not going to be mad at myself. So I know that also is a part of that accountability, like to actually physically change something and quantum shift that energy, accepting it for what it is and just saying, I am here. Okay, I know this isn't where I want to be, but I'm here. And in order for me to actually quantum shift the energy for a long term and transform it forever, I need to accept rather than keep shoving it behind me and saying, well, this is bad, you know, or, oh my God, I never want to do that again. Like, we have to look at it for what it is. And it does, and goes beyond addiction, right? It goes beyond everything in our lives, even trauma, which feeds a lot of addiction, where it's like, okay, this happened to me, but I can't change the energy around what I have that attachment to when it comes to that memory or that thought. If I don't accept it for what it is, then we keep having that imprint, and we'll keep feeling that in our body, and we'll keep having that energy somewhere, and our brain will physiologically keep firing in the same way, you know? Yeah, that's another thing that I didn't really like about that, was because it didn't say that. It always was like, well, this is bad. Drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. Well, in some cultures, the drug that we call are bad are their medicine, you know? So like, what is bad? You know, I notice that a lot in the spiritual community. We'll be like, alcohol's bad. Alcohol to an extent is bad, right? My culture, they use alcohol for spiritual connection, or tobacco is bad. Some cultures, tobacco is the most potent medicine. So it's like, what is that even? That does nothing for it.
Yeah, you see that across several religions, because in, like, you know, pagan and Wiccan community, a lot of times when we offer up offerings to a deity, we're pouring wine in a chalice. If you look at, you know, Christian communion, they're drinking wine. And for them, it's part of a sacred act. It's part of taking that substance and identifying it as holy and revering it and treating it with the respect it deserves. And you run into problems again. Like, I believe the same thing. It's not bad. Good and bad are things that we ascribe to shit. Shit's not, there's nothing good or bad. Things just are. Psychologically, you go, that's bad. That's good. This is a bad word. No, it's not. It's just a word that culturally we've gone, hey, don't say that. Like, you know, we look at substances, we look at, you know, drugs, tobacco, alcohol. It's the same thing. Like, when you treat it with respect, it has a place in the universe. It has an absolute place. It has a function. It has a form. The abuse of that, the disrespect of that, is when you run into the problem.
Yes. And that's what they don't talk about. That's what people don't talk about enough. It's not the substance itself. It's the abuse of it. It's not the action itself. It's the abuse of it. You know, it's not the coping mechanism itself. It's the abuse of the thing that makes it what it is, you know?
Now, excuse me, have either one of you in your practice, in doing actual magic work while either drinking or high, like, did you find that you were maybe tempted to abuse the energy and the power in the ritual? Like maybe you started with one intent, but then you get in there and you're like, now there's an option to do this, or it just kind of takes a whole different direction and maybe not in the most successful way. No.
Like, because the most experience I've ever had with using any sort of substances with any sort of my spiritual work has usually been when I've been reading cards. And I won't drink now when I read cards for people, even if I'm at like a social setting, because like a lot of times like I am that friend at the party that shows up and people go, "You got cards in your bag? Bring them out. Come on." Like I am that person now. And I would notice that if I had a couple of drinks, I was feeling pretty good about myself, whatever, I would start to turn cards over and I would almost hit a resistance. Like I'd shuffle and I'd go to turn the card and I would almost feel like this, like there was almost like a hand there that wanted to go, knock that off, put that down, don't do that. And it was that weird hesitation of like, man, this doesn't feel right. All right, whatever, here's this card. Like there was some subconscious part of me, or maybe it was one of my higher powers or there was something there that would tell me consistently, you sure you want to do that? Like it didn't feel right. It didn't feel good. It suddenly didn't feel good. And for me, that's always been what I try to tell people about, like how you find your religion, how you find your magic, how you find your spirituality. Does it feel good? Then you're doing it right. If you feel at peace, if you feel it makes sense, if you feel whole, you're doing it right. Anytime I would try to drink and do cards, anytime I would try to smoke anything like that and try to do anything spiritual, I felt fuzzy. I felt tainted. I felt like, oh, like I'm not as plugged in as I should be. I had that hesitation that it wasn't as good. It didn't feel as good for me. Even though, don't get me wrong, as somebody who partakes in substances, absolutely, drinking can feel good, takes the edge off. Smoking can feel good, whether if it's cannabis or tobacco. Like that brain chemical and that alteration feels good biologically. That's why people are addicted. We've done that for us. But when your spirituality suddenly doesn't feel good, like it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. You know, I don't think I ever intentionally was like, oh, I'm gonna, well, maybe like a psychedelic or something in a mild dose where I'm going to be sitting with myself or a best friend or somebody and we're sitting outside and we're meditating or dancing. And that was the intention, right? And that's part of the ceremony in which we're doing. And normally it will be like something, I don't know what an example would be, but, and there was times where like I drank and I was at a party or something and people were like, "Oh, Britt." And I'm like, "Oh my God, your dad's right here." And I got to tell you, right? So I guess it would just be the situation, you know, because sometimes like when I drink normally, it's not things that will come up. It's the way for me to suppress it. But I guess it would just be the situation and who's around and what's happening and where we are. Because I know there's been times where like my best friend's stepdad has come through when I'm sitting there having shots of tequila with them. And then there's times where I'm drinking and it's mostly suppressing for me, right? Or there's times like when if I smoke cannabis, then it gives me an opportunity to sleep instead. And then there's times where things get really heightened and I'm like, oh my God, I got to feel everything that everybody has going on over here, right? So I guess it depends on the situation, probably energetically what's going on in the planets, or even like, am I close to my cycle? Because normally when I'm near my cycle, everything is already heightened anyways, you know? So, but not like intently, like it never was like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. Besides maybe like microdosing mushrooms and maybe on a full moon and when we're dancing and then we're sitting in medicine for ourselves. But besides that, I never actually intentionally was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. And then, you know, besides maybe like a glass of wine when I worked with Oya, you know, when I worked with my mother, I would pour her a glass of wine and have a glass for myself, but nothing where it would be like too much, right? So I guess I never intentionally was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to drink. Like I never did that. If it happened, it happened. And if it heightened it, it heightened it. But normally, like if I was drinking or doing something, it wasn't to, it was more of like, you can't ask me right now because I can't hear anything. You know what I mean? Like, okay, because that's the thing. Like I am that friend. Every time for a long time, I just don't go I don't really go anywhere. I'll be honest. I don't go anywhere anyways, even outside of maybe Yellow and quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell my best friend that. I'd be like, I don't want to go because people are going to ask me questions. And it always happens.
Yep.
Every single time. I'm like, can I just, I guess, it's enjoyable because it's my work, but sometimes I'm like, I want to go somewhere and nobody asks me a question. If I
leave me alone.
You can ask me a question because I'll be like, I'm too drunk, or I'm high, leave me alone. Or like, let me go to sleep right now, So yeah, but I don't go enough places anymore to even do that because I'm good at being asked questions when I'm off the clock.
Well, and it makes sense though that there are several like religious and spiritual practices that utilize alcohol use, substance use of some kind to heighten their psychic awareness, to heighten their ability to connect with their divine. Because like magic mushrooms, for example, are a perfect example. Psilocybin, like you dose someone with psilocybin, like it causes what commonly referred to as like synesthesia, which is where it makes parts of your brain communicate with other parts of your brain it normally doesn't. And you forge these new connections and things are firing at the same time that they shouldn't normally be firing. And that's when you usually get people that go, I can taste the color blue and I can see vibrations. Like it's parts of your brain talking. And I am a firm believer that a lot of your connection with your higher power on that subconscious level, like, yeah, absolutely. If you give yourself a substance where your brain starts going, we're going to talk to everybody all the time, of course, whatever part of your genetic code, whatever part of your DNA is responsible for helping you make that connection spiritually, yeah, you turned it on too. You turned it on with all the other things that are going on now. So of course you're going to have that heightened experience. You're going to have that more metaphysical and out-of-body experience with your higher power because you've given your brain the ability to make that connection effortlessly, but you've done it within so much static of all the other shit that's going on in your brain at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people. It's so hard to tease that apart and say, I'm going to, do this dose and I'm going to commune with my spirits or whatever. And these are the messages I'm going to receive, sifting through that and going, here are the messages I received versus, nah, this was just my brain getting lost in the pattern on the carpet. This wasn't anything. Ignore that part. Like teasing those apart is hard because and that just comes down to basically what you do and don't instinctually know is right and was wrong there. Like, but I do see a lot of, I would love to watch someone like do some sort of religious dosing. I would love to watch someone take mushrooms to commune with their spirit. I would love to watch someone use peyote because I would love to see how they're utilizing that substance in their connection with their higher power and what it's doing for them and what connection they're forging there and how it's enhancing that for them.
You know what? Because I do a lot of research. I used to use psychedelics just to use them because I like to get high, right? But then started not, like, as I was getting older, I'm like, wait a second, there's something to this, like using it in way smaller doses where you don't really have a trip, you just kind of like where now it's legal in terms of medicine, right? Where they're using it for anxiety, depression, and addiction. And so I lost my train of thought. Oh, what I was going to say is watching, so I've done microdose where it's small, where you're not tripping, right? You just feel this kind of like you had maybe a cup of coffee that's a little calmer. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I noticed, and I've done psychedelics in the past, so I knew how it felt, right? But I noticed people who were starting to, they were prescribed that, or their doctors were like, oh, try this, because they have a lot of that around right now, where they didn't take what would be like a religious dose, but it still gave them the connection to their higher power. You know what I mean? Where it's like just enough for them to remove something that was causing the trauma or causing the addiction, that it was like their blinder, where they were able to see like, oh, like Earth is beautiful, or, oh, I love healthy foods, or, and so it's like such a fine line, right? Between like, when do you use this to like heal yourself, or when is it like too much, you know? Because that was such a beautiful thing, even for myself. And even though I did so many psychedelics before, when I did that microdose series, it was little things where like, you wanted to drink more water, and you're not feeling high. You just, you're like, wow, like I want to drink more. I want to eat more fresh fruit, or I want to do this. Right. And so I noticed people who, like friends who were struggling heavy with cocaine, and that's what somebody told them to do, was like, oh, you should try this series of microdoses. And so it's very, very small. And they actually came off of the coke from being able to connect, like, oh, there is something, like their reasoning for being on the drug was, I have nothing to live for, right? Like, I don't have any other reason. I don't have kids. I'm already in this space. I've been in trouble for so long. And now they're like, oh my God, like, wait a second, I have a purpose. Oh, I've connected. But it was not a dose that we would normally think to be a trippy dose. Yes, it's not a dose that you would normally go and somebody's like going to take you and you have to have people around you because you might lose it. It was so mild that I actually was surprised. I was like, wow. And now look, now we have it a lot of places. You know? Yeah, the research that's coming out about like the psilocybin and using it for like modern day like breakthroughs with a lot of, you know, anxiety, depression, addiction, things like that. Like that chemical rewiring of your brain, so potent. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Like I'm one of those people that like I get a good either meditation in my beta waves, or I get like a really good endorphin rush and high. Like I don't use enough substances in my day-to-day life that the substance, like I'm that weirdo that sits in the front seat of the roller coaster to get the adrenaline rush because I like the buzz. Yes. When you rewire your brain like that, and when you give your brain the opportunity to start feeling those neurotransmitters for the first time in a really long time, suddenly, you're like, oh shit, like I do care about me. I should care about me in the earth and my place in the universe. And oh damn, like that rewiring is so amazing. And I'm looking forward to like the next 10 years of research that are going to come out about psilocybin. Oh my God. It is going to be buck wild to see what they come up with, because I am excited to see what connections they're making, because they've already started to make these other connections too. Like I found a really cool article earlier today about a couple years ago where somebody did some research on genes influencing someone's ability to read someone's mind through their eyes. Wow. And it was a study done in 2017 out of the University of Cambridge, where they did this, you know, reading the mind through the eye test, where they would have participants look at each other in the eye, and statistically, which I wasn't surprised, women would do better at it. But women with a gene variation would do even better at it. They would be able to report back what that person was thinking or feeling. So they would, like, the test was like, you looked at this person for 30 seconds on, you know, sustained eye contact, and then you reported, I think this person is feeling this. They were thinking about this. They were thinking about X, Y, Z. They were finding that the people that consistently got it right were also the people that consistently had an altered gene marker. Like a lot of magic and a lot of that stuff, like it's genetic, it's hereditary. I mean, just like addiction can be hereditary and pass through a family, like practice can be practiced through families like that too. That stuff, like it runs in families. And don't get me wrong, genetic anomalies show up, and it's kind of like to have the one redheaded in a family. Like, we don't know where you came from, but you're here. You can get practitioners in your family the same way, but there's a lot to be said for the fact that they are finding more and more biological connection between the hard science of how our brains are working and things we used to think were big hokum foofy magic that we don't explain. Like, they're getting closer. And it's so exciting to see. I am a firm believer in the next 10 years, we're going to come across a huge breakthrough between the metaphysical world and the physical world, and how way more connected they really are than we're thinking. Yeah. Or at least we know, but now other people can know, you know, because that's the one thing where I'm like, okay, we can know these things, but how do you explain it to somebody who can't see things the way that like maybe we see things? You know what I mean? Or like even my husband, like, and I try to explain things to him, like, can't you see that? Like how I explain it and how I see it in my head. And he's like, that makes no sense. You know, and just forget it. Right. But yeah, I think that's so beautiful to be able to scientifically prove something to somebody who maybe cannot grasp. For example, my best friend, I've been studying a lot of human design. And so it makes a lot of sense to things that we already know, right? It's just another confirmation. And so I have an open eye, an open crown, and an open ajna, which is perfect because that's why I always travel. And so I try to explain things to my best friend in a very cosmic way. And she looks at me and I'm like, don't you see what I'm talking about? Like, it's very clear. Here it is, you know? And she's like, no, I don't get it. And then I looked and hers is closed. So she has a one-track mind. You can't alter it. Like, so I'm like, this is really cool. Like little things like that, like human design, where you're like, oh, okay, so now I know why I'm a traveler and why she maybe doesn't travel. And if I tried to explain to her this reality that I was into, that I was at or in, or work that I was doing there in my dreams and how we're going to ground it here, she looked at me like I'm nuts, right? She's like, I can't physically take myself there. And I'm like, well, I don't get why you can't. Like, you do the same thing as me, you know? But so I think that's so cool. Just all these different ways of showing, like you said, connections through family or through your design or whatever, and being able to see, okay, this makes sense. This is why this person is this, because I'm the 4th generation medium. My grandma, who's here, my aunt, who she lives with, and my great grandma are all, and there's actually most women in our family and my dad's side. And we were just talking about that. We were saying how, like, my grandma, even with dementia, she physically sees spirits. I have a fear of waking up and seeing them. So I know I've banned that since I was younger. So I can feel them and I'll hear them, but I won't see them, right? And my grandma said the same thing. She was like, I banished that, being able to see them, because I would see them all the time. But my great grandma, even still with dementia, will see them and tell us exactly. She cannot tell us who we are, but she can tell us who they are, you know? And so, yeah, it's just really cool to see. Like, I would be curious to know their design, their human designs, and if they have the same, because they're travelers. Like my grandma, she was just here and she was telling me how, and my aunt too was saying, when they were younger, and there was a lot of addiction on that side of the family, right? A lot. And my aunt was like, when I was younger, the reason why my aunt got into Christianity is she said, I didn't have anybody to teach me how to work with what was coming through. So I went this direction because it was very this, right? And so I had to shut it off, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be very curious to know what their designs are, because I can guarantee you they probably have both of these open, because the way we all think and the way we all connect and the way we all channel is very, very similar.
Right. Well, and everybody, you know, works through this in their own way. There is no right or wrong way. Just relating to a comment that I see, I don't know if you ladies can see it, and it says, all bad. Try connecting with a human. I had a shared rainbow hallucination. And I just want to point out, there's no all bad. You know, clearly, you know, Brittany, you were able to come out of your addiction in your own unique way. And now you are in a position to help others, you know, and I was so glad that you were willing to have this conversation, you know, with us. And, you know, in doing the healing work and knowing friends that I have that are in and out, I'm fortunate that I don't have an addictive personality. But my son comes on, you know, from his father's side, who has a very, very, like, it runs. And unfortunately, so does depression and suicide. So these are conversations I have to have with him. Like, hey, buddy. And he's also, and here's a little sidetrack, speaking for what you were saying, Brittany, of not knowing how to work with your spiritual. He's Native. He's the whitest little Native boy, but he's Native, Cherokee and Choctaw. And the Native American communities have such a high drugs, you know, substance abuse and alcoholism. And they are one of the many cultures that they have lost so much of their tradition because they weren't allowed to practice. They weren't allowed to hand it down. You know, so how many of these young people in these tribes and these culture are suffering because they don't know how to connect and they don't know how to handle that and the energy around them. You know, so if nobody can help you, if nobody can answer that question, well, I'm going to go drown it out with this bottle of whatever. You know,
well, that's what most addiction and substance use ends up being. It's an escape. It's a way out. It's you can't deal with what's in front of you in a way that you can put it to bed at night and sleep peacefully. Like the people, you have never met someone who has suffered And so you have truly met an addict, because the things that they are running from, the things that they are trying to fix, the things they're hiding from, like that's what's spurring the addiction. That's what's spurring the behavior and like the escapism and stuff like that. And like we touched on at the very beginning of the conversation, the fact that we remove the idea of spirituality as a pillar of our health. We think that, you know, you need food, water, shelter, and your health. It's like, okay, we also need spirituality in there too. Like you need to be absolutely biologically fit, be psychologically sound, be spiritually whole. Like we've taken that entire pillar out, but we're still running into problems where that's the solution. That's the pillar that needs worked on. But we're acting like, well, that's not connected. Don't worry about that. Like, okay, well, then why do you think some of the more successful, like, okay, and again, doesn't work for everyone, but it works for a hell of a lot of people when they choose to get sober. The 12-step program works because it's based on you find your higher power. You and your higher power get like this, and you guys are going to go through it together. And people need that. There are people that thrive on the fact that they finally feel connected to something bigger than themselves. They feel connected to something that's bigger than the addiction, and it's bigger than the substance that they were using, and it's bigger than themselves. And it's that connection, that where they finally feel like they know their place in the universe, is what spurs them on. Like that is so profound to think that like you give someone the comfort and the satisfaction of knowing, hey, not only do you matter, but here's your higher power that's going to tell you that you matter. Like that is a profound comfort that so many people suffering from addiction don't have.
Yeah, you know what, thinking of too what you said, Melissa, like going back to my dad's side of the family, right? We're African. So thinking how 400 plus years that our spiritual practices weren't even thought of as spiritual practices, right? Like they were just how we lived. And then here you come, okay, now you can't practice them anymore. And now look at the Black communities, right? There's a high prevalence of addiction in where we were placed, or the spaces that we were given, because you ripped us out of our practices and then said, that's bad, but that was just our way of life. You know, like how can you tell somebody what they were doing was bad? And so, yeah, I often think about that, because, you know, like even there, I know there's a lot of places now that have been colonized in Africa and, you know, Christian and Catholic and such, but even like the places that have not, they don't think of spirituality as, oh, it's separate. It's just how you're born. You are born that way. It's not something where like, this is our spiritual practices. That's not even how it's explained. The rituals are just rituals, and that's just how you move. Mm-hmm. There's an elder and the grandfather or the grandmother, and they have different roles, and that's just how it is. You know, I'm reading this book and I really love it. It's called Of Spirit and Water, or Water and Spirit, I think is what it is. And it is about like how things just went, you know, like how things in the community are when there's death. Like the practices aren't like ours; they are different because this was just the way of life. The grandfather was the elder; he had certain things in the home that other people didn't, but like here it would be called a spiritual practice because it looks so separate, you know. But there it's not separate; it's just that's how we.
It's just part of you.
Yeah. Huge dissociation.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. This has been a fun conversation. I think it went off a little farther than what I thought we were going to talk, but it's been good. Because in my mind at first I was thinking, I'm like, oh, like the casting of the magic and do you hit the road bumps, and you know, maybe we can come back and visit that if we wanted to. But I think it was a really good conversation. I was watching the numbers coming and going, and we just had that one, you know, comment. But I'm sure this is going to be something that I'm going to get in the stores page later in like private, because you know, this is something that maybe, you know, the family doesn't know that you're struggling, and so you don't want to throw it out there on Facebook or YouTube to show up like, hey, I'm dealing with, you know. So I might reach out to either one of you later and be like, hey,
yeah, please.
And And that's perfectly understandable and okay.
Yeah, you are not alone. You are profoundly not alone with the struggles that you are going through if you are suffering from any sort of addiction, or family members that are living with addiction. Like, it is a tricky, difficult, unfortunate situation that a lot of people find themselves in. So do not be afraid, even if you just have to say the words, "Hey, I think, so and so I think is addicted." Just open your mouth, just start talking, because as soon as you open your mouth in front of the right people, you're going to get that help. You're going to get that connection of going, "I don't know, I got you, fam. Like, I know what you're dealing with. Let's go. Come on. Like, I've got your back." Like, you're not alone.
Yes, and there's always, places that you can reach out to or find if the immediate people around you don't know. Like, just keep asking and keep reaching out, and you're going to run into somebody. And that being said, I mean, there's this whole community here through practitioners and workers that can help and that can, network for you too. So it's pretty much, I mean, like the whole gig of this place, is self-healing and learning about yourself. And, COVID has forced so many people to do that. So, sitting back now, and I'm like, there are so many new faces coming in and so many new questions and so many new things, because work was taken off the table, all of those other busy things that you got to distract yourself with, and I'm not going to deal with it, wiped away.
Nothing like sitting at home with your own thoughts.
Right?
Yeah, really.
You got to sit with yourself and stew in yourself and all
for months and months.
Which at the same time, though, I'm like old, 40-something goth girl. I'm okay with that. Like, I've done this.
Listen, I love it. I'm like, okay, I don't even like people. So, I mean, I do like people, but like, my mom was over today and they were talking so much. And I'm like, you guys are talking so much. Can everybody leave?
Well, and I feel bad because, like, my husband is a very social person. He loves social interaction, and he's been working since March. And since I work in a medical facility, I've been going to work this entire time, honestly, working more hours because of how batshit things got. And I forget, because, like, I'll come home at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm peopled out. I've had to smile and be friendly and be polite and on top of, and I come home and he's just like, "How's your day? Tell me everything. Can we go to Target? What did you do with your day?" "I didn't do anything. I stared at the same 4 walls all day. Talk to me." And he follows me around the house because he's like, I haven't spoken to another living person. You have to entertain me. You have to stimulate me. So I feel I have so much sympathy for those introverted extroverts out there that didn't realize that they needed the human connection that they were getting until it left them, and they're sitting at home going, "It's just me and my thoughts here now."
That's so funny, because I was complete opposite. I was like, wow, I don't have to go anywhere at all. And nobody can go over. I didn't realize.
And no one's going to talk to me.
So I'm like, here I am in my room. I already work from home, but like, then there really was like, "Oh, come over and say hi," or like, "Hey, we have a birthday party." I already used to say no, and now I didn't have to say an excuse. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even have to say no. And guess what? You can't prove it. And then I became an EYAWO, right? And so nobody could come over. And I was like, nobody can come unless you're working for me.
Sorry.
I'm not going to pay you, so don't come, like, I will sit with myself and my ancestors. We will have a grand old time drinking coffee.
Yeah, I was okay with. I'm like, I get legally mandated to stay home. Yes. And the business side of me went, oh shit. But the personal side of me was like, okay.
Yeah. Same thing.
Things got delivered. I'm like, there's a delivery service that will deliver your Target. I don't even have to drive up. There was drive up, right? And so drive up. And now there's not even, you don't even have to. I
don't have to leave my house. You'll come to me.
I'm like, listen, my neighbor was like, "There's a car in my driveway every single day." And I'm like, I don't have to leave. And that's
great. It's great.
And see, I love the fact that my son is pretty laid back like I am. He might come as I'm coming, him and the cat, like I get greeted by them. I get the hugs, we do the pets, and then they wander away.
Yeah.
And I can go sit down and just, chill. And sometimes depending on the phone call and I'm looking at it and I'm like,
I don't want to answer that.
Nope. It's 8:30 at night, 9 o'clock. I'm done.
Nah.
Nope.
Yeah. No, I love my work. Like I love working with people through my work. But besides that, like I don't have anything else to say. You know what I mean? Like I said it all. I channeled it all. I have nothing else to say. Let me just. Sometimes my husband and son would be like, "What are you going to go do?" And I'm like, "I'm going to go sit in the bed in silence. Don't anybody say anything to me." You know what I mean?
I will do that. I do the same thing. Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hated the fact that when the world was shutting down, everyone's like, we get to work from home. I'm like, I don't. I get to go to work even more. Cool. On weekends now, I will draw baths. I used to like read in the bathtub. Now I just kind of like hold the book and just sit for the sake of like, I don't have to do anything. I'm just here alone in the silence, and it's nice. And I feel so bad because like I'll get out of the shower or out of the bath and like there's my loving husband, lonely, going, "Hey, what do you want to do for dinner?" I'm like, sit in silence for 20 more minutes.
Right. But I can't do that.
That's my husband too, because he's home now. Like, well, not because of COVID, but he's home. And so he'll wake up and be like, "What do you want to do today? What do you want for dinner?" And I'm like, come. I don't even know. I don't even know what I'm doing yet. I'm still, wherever I travel, I haven't even come back in my body. I need you to give me 2 hours, please, you know? But yeah, that's funny. I really have enjoyed this time though. I know not a lot of people have, but I really loved quarantine.
You're living in a wild time.
Yeah, I've been okay with it. And there's that, as much as I want COVID to be over and to go back to like the mask and everything, there's part of me that I'm like, well, I don't get that excuse to keep. I used to tell people like back up 3 feet, like you don't need to be on me.
Yes.
Now I'm like, get your ass 6 feet back, you know. And I'm like, oh man, I'll lose that.
I have wanted to invest in a squirt bottle so badly, sitting at the front desk there and having people lean into the counter. It's like,
yeah, and now they have
to get the little squirt bottle after them. Shh, back up. Like,
yes.
You know what? I didn't notice how much I didn't like touching people until I became in a Yahoo and couldn't touch people for 100 days, right? And now I'm like, no, I actually, you know what? I actually don't want you to touch me. My mom would be like, let's hug. And I'm like, I don't even really like that. I thought I loved hugs. Actually, I don't.
Oh, I'm a touchy person.
I do love hugs to an extent, but not as much as I thought, right? And then people are quarantining, so then they really can't like do this thing on your shoulder. I actually don't want you to touch me because I feel much energetically more aligned when people are not, you know?
And that's so wild because I'm one of those people that like, I'll touch strangers in the grocery store. I love human contact. For me, I feel grounded. I feel connected.
Oh no.
I'm that weirdo that taps you on the shoulder and is like, I really like your scarf. Can I feel it? Like, your hair looks really pretty. Can I touch your hair? Like, I will find excuses to just casually touch strangers because I forget, like, I'm comfortable with me and my personal space. You're not necessarily comfortable with your personal space, though, so I should be respectful of that.
Yeah, I was like that. I would be very touchy-feely, and then I realized, I guess it didn't really hit me until I'm more sensitive now because of this initiation. So I'm like really like, okay, I don't really want your finger on me because now I have to go cleanse myself 10 more times, you know? So now I'm like, I actually kind of like that people can't touch each other because there's been times where like people will have like touched my hair or, you know, or like things where I'm like, no. And now like even like my family, when they would come over and I'm like, I already just did a couple clients and I'm really just settling down and everybody wants to hug me. And now like,
no, I'm good. Step up.
Stay over there.
There's a set of sisters, which I haven't seen in the whole COVID, but it was this game that we would play where the older sister, a big hugger, the younger, she would shake my hand. My safe spot was behind my register. If I was out on the floor, I was fair game, and they would like kind of chase me like Pac-Man to like get a hug and a handshake, you know. And I'm like, and this every time they came in, and so you know, if I got behind the counter, I was safe. So then the younger sister would stand right there. She's like, "You have to come out." I'm like, "Don't make me jump this counter. Like I will crawl over this counter."
Like, I'll wait. It's fine.
You know, it wasn't like, oh, it hurt. It was just more of it became the game when they found out like, oh, you're not a big hugger. And I'm like, no, not really. you know, so it became this game, and other people would laugh, like who knew what was going on, and they would. In my mind, I'm like, I bet we look like Pac-Man.
As you chase each other around the store.
Imagine that in my head when I'm like looking at it. Actually, it's funny because the symbol that's behind you is kind of like that, and so now I'm seeing you run through that with people.
Well, and I think it's so interesting because as somebody who loves touching and enjoys being touched, when I come against people who don't enjoy a lot of casual free touch, when you do get that casual like little touch from them, it is so validating because you're like, yes, I got through to them. They gave me a pat on the shoulder. I'm like, I'm in. They like me. I got a shoulder touch. I'm cool. Like it's like getting a cat to like you. You're like, oh yes, I'm in. They like me.
Oh my gosh, that's my cat. Like he will smack me all day. He will put his paw on my hand, on me. But as soon as I do it, he looks at me like,
how dare you?
And moves it away. Like, I can't believe that you tried to lay with me. And I'm like, you laid on my head. That makes no sense. Like, I'm coming to lay with you. And now you're like, ugh.
Like, begone, peasant, I don't need you.
Yes. I swear that's how he talks to me. He's like, you're just a human. And I'm like, I know, but
I'm bigger than you and I'm going to take you.
That too.
Let me love you.
I'm lucky my cat's he's very much the lover and and I cannot remember the name of the cat from Inspector Gadget that would sit on the arm of the villain. But that's how he is with me when I sit in my chair. He's always on the arm, you know, but the minute I recline back, then he's like right here.
He can lay on us, but if you put your hand on him for too long, forget it. Like he wants to be on you, but you cannot hug him. Forget it.
No, he'll roll over. He'll turn, like get closer, like do it more. Do it more. Here's my belly. Rub it.
Here's my belly in case you needed it.
With his head. But like if you try to do this, he'll be like, no, I'm getting up. And I'm like, no, you can't have it. Like you just can't have it your way. You have to let me hug you or you can't lay on me.
It just has to be his idea.
Yeah, it does. He's a Leo. I don't really know if he's a Leo.
He just acts like one.
Hey, my cat acts like a two-faced Gemini, so I get it.
He could be a Gemini, actually. You know, well, we don't really know what he is, but he's very extra. That's why I thought he was either Leo or Libra. Because when I tell you, and he's beautiful. Like, look at me in my tail and let me walk real slow, just so you know. And then turn around and be like, blink my eyes. And I'm like,
looking at me? That's right.
Yeah, I'm like, you would have to be a Leo or a Libra. One of the two.
Should do like the thirst trap TikTok just
that's straight up Leo energy.
All of my clients, because it's so funny, we'll be in class and he has to come in. It's only when I'm doing my work. He has to come in here. If I have somebody whose ancestors are coming through really strong, he will be at that door. And they watch him. They crack up because they're like, he's the most extra cat I've ever seen. And I'm like, I know, like, it's taking him 5 minutes to walk through the door because he needs to shake himself and be like, here I am. I'm like, I have a class to teach. I can't be waiting.
He's participating.
Yeah, he's a nut.
Fun time. I love cats.
Thank you.
We're way off topic, but this has been fun.
This is a great one. I like this topic. This is a good. I would love to take on more like heated and charged topics like this when it like cross sections with the metaphysical community, because I think conversations like this are really important to have.
Boss cat name is bad. That's from Inspector Gadget.
I think maybe, yeah. I think, yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Elias. Elias is going to be with us at the fair,
which is happening this Sunday.
Yes, and hopefully soon, maybe we'll get Brittany to come back out. I don't know if we're going to.
You know, that's funny because I actually have two. I have two women who are partners, they're fiancés, and they found me at the wellness fair. Okay. Yeah. Nice. And they were like, hey, they're actually going to be my one-on-ones now. And they emailed me and said, hey, we saw you last year. And I was like, I remember you. I was like, that was really cool. So now I'm working with them. We actually start next week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody was asking, they're like, when is the winery? And I'm like, right now I can't even, like, I'm sure if I were to call up the poor manager at the winery, you're like, I don't know.
He would just weep.
Because I mean, the amount of people that come out for these wineries, there's no way you can limit those. You can distance those.
Oh my God, no.
You know,
and who knows? You know what I mean? I mean, We really don't. No.
Yeah. So I'm like, maybe September if we're lucky. I'm not even gonna hold
Right.
my June.
But this Sunday's happening for sure.
Yes, here in the store and slightly on the other side of the wall with Hank's office to help keep the whole social distancing thing, separated. So it's too cold to take over outside. So we'll back and forth between the wall, which, Hank keeps saying this is another reason why I need to let him cut a hole in the wall and put a door in. And no, I banish you and your noisemakers to the other side of that wall.
Other side of the wall. I need a barrier.
Yes. Because I'm the weirdo. Like, I don't like the singing bowls. I don't like, the forks are okay to a certain point. Drumming, I'm like, no. Get angry with it, especially if it's all chaotic. Like, no. And I'm like, I'm a weirdo. It's loud. It's over. It's just teeth grinding to me. So I'm like, you and your noisemakers, your didgeridoos, your crystal pieces, your bowls, your conch shells, all of that over there.
I will have silence.
Yes, and he's like, okay. So we'll use part of his office with all of his noisemakers.
There we go.
Over there. So if you're into noisemakers, Alexa, you can
go see him.
Yes. You can play with all his spinning forks and his bowls. He's got gongs. I'm like, those do not come in here. They stay.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Hank is like the big kid with the noisy toys.
Somebody his parents bought him a drum set. It was all downhill from there.
It's funny. Like, I like metal and I like bass, but it's like the deeper, those high pitched tinny things. It's just.
It depends for me. It depends on what I've done that day, who I've been around, how much work I've done. If I sat in silence maybe for 2 days, I can do a lot of noise. Then otherwise, no. I like loud music though, so it really just depends on what's going on.
And see, I find now too, like a song that I like will come on and I'll turn it up about halfway through. I'm like, no, back down we go. And like my Durango's decked out with like the big Bose system and everything. So I mean, everybody hear it, and I'm like Dragula, and I'm like, no,
Rob, be a little quieter, Rob, for me. Shush.
Right. So, all right, now that it's like
crazy kids,
almost 20 after 9.
We had a lot to say.
Yeah, we did, and it was fun. And I think we got a lot of important information out for people. And maybe we'll do this one again if you ladies want.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like doing these.
The sobriety and spirituality tomorrow night. So a continuation on in a way.
Nice.
Oh yes. Okay, I'm gonna be there.
Like you're gonna feel right now.
Brittany's like, that sounds so much fun. How can I I'm there. Just kidding.
I know. If I don't have, that's why I say send me a Google thing, because if I don't have it written down, forget it.
It's not happening. It doesn't exist.
You're like, oh.
And I remember I can do that, and then I promptly went and got sidetracked with something else. And I'm like, can you be coming?
Let me make sure I write that down.
Because I feel like I am. Too many balls up in the air and too many things on the plate, and every now and then I'm dropping one.
There you go.
Join us tomorrow night. Brittany and I will be back with Hank and Jim. Sobriety, and spirituality. So kind of more on the psychic mediumship side rather than like the magic and the casting, and which we didn't really get too far into tonight.
Yeah.
Like, do you find that fire ignores you if you're on wine because that's more liquid? Something like that. I don't know. No. No. And there's our answer. Nope.
Right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Come see us at the fair. Stop in. Hopefully we'll get Brittany in person soon someday.
When I can leave my house
safely.
And
right.
Maybe feel like it,
Right. We'll come kidnap you. Even I, the other introvert who will come get you.
I might have to come in my robe.
True COVID fashion.
Maybe February
for a very long time. I saw this one thing that was like the stages of working from home. Since I've been home since 2018, And so the stages of working from home, and it was like, okay, get up and do your makeup. And then it was like, okay, now you're just putting on nice clothes and no makeup. And then it was like, okay, just sweatpants.
Yep.
And I think I've been doing that for a very, very long time.
I barely remembered to get the eyebrows on yesterday before Mary Ann's live because I do Wednesday mornings with her about ghosts and spirits and stuff. And I'm sitting there because I can go into the back room before I bring you guys in and test everything. And I'm sitting like, oh shit, I got to go put those on. Like, another reason why I need to get them tattooed so I don't forget.
Don't have to worry about it. Yep.
Yeah, like so one of these days. Okay, so thanks for joining us, everybody. Come see us for the fair. Join us for any more lives. Feel free to send personal questions to the store page. We'll get your answers and reply to you. So, yeah. Any parting words?
Have a beautiful evening. It's late.
Just like,
Yeah, for me, it feels late.
sleep well, sleep soundly. Tomorrow the sun comes up.
Happy full moon.
Blessed full moon.
Yeah.
Do some grounding shit where you're gonna need it.
Yeah, right before this one, Nikki and I were burning things in the cauldron. I'm like, we got 45 minutes because I got one right after this. Let's go.
Yep. Magic on a time frame. Let's go, people.
Structure. Pretend to have it. I wing it pretty good sometimes. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Night, guys. Take care.
Night.
Night.